All right. So here we are back. Episode, who knows, season three. Um, Again, reaching across the pond to the UK. And I have James from Penny Arcade joining us. Now, James, this is your first solo venture. Is that safe to say, or is it not?
No, I think it is safe to say that. Yeah, it is. It is.
Right. Because James has other or has been in other bands. Veronica Falls, amazing. The proper ornaments, amazing. The ultimate painting. So you've been in a ton of different bands. What prompted you to venture off on your own this time and create a record all around your own music?
I guess I do really enjoy working with other people, but if you've never done it, you'd always be kind of asking yourself, did I miss out not doing something on your own? Because as much as I love working with other people, that it is something very satisfying about seeing something through the whole process with yourself being the only significant contributor. Put it that way.
Right.
And it is a way to really find out exactly what you're about, because if you're working with other people that you respect and you like what they do, you end up always slightly tailoring
Mm.
your ideas to things that will work with what they're doing.
Right. Right.
And that's what I realized I've done, and I like that. I did that with all the bands I've done and other people I've worked with. But I'll think of a song. I'll think, are they going to like that? Is she gonna? Is this going to work well with her vocal? So there's that element that if you do it on your own, you're distilling. This is really what the sound that you're about.
Absolutely. And how long did this record take to actually gather all the songs? And I read somewhere where it was kind of you're having to kind of like fix things to get the tracks all together. There were
Yeah,
ideas, I imagine, that had quite a lifespan to them.
yeah. It was. It was a combination of things that led to it taking a while. It wasn't really the songs, but it was the recording process.
Hmm.
And I'd relocated just before making this record from London, and where I live in the country, I couldn't find any drummers down here. So each time I wanted to do some recording, I'd have to bring one of my friends from London down.
Right.
And as people get busier, and lots of my friends now have little kids, or they're
Hmm.
making their professional careers slightly more professional, being more professional, should we put it that way? So
Right.
it took more time to get people to come down, and that ended up taking a while. And then I record everything on tape, and I've always done everything analog. And I
Hmm.
was working with a machine that kind of halfway through broke, and I just couldn't get fixed. And I brought someone down from London to work on it, and we couldn't get it fixed, so I had to get another machine and continue again from the kind of
Hmm.
mid. I was already like two-thirds of the way through, and then I had to start again.
Wow.
But
Wow.
so that it ended up, I was probably working on it on and off for a couple of years, but it
Hmm.
wasn't like working every day. I would do a bit,
Sure.
wait for someone to come down and do some more drums, and then a bit later. And I called it Backwater Collage because I was piecing together these recordings from a few different tape machines over different sessions. And in
Wow.
the end, I think it sounds cohesive. And
Hmm.
it sounds like it could have been done at the same time, but it was done on a number of different sessions with perhaps six different drummers.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing that you say that because it is true. The flow of the record is almost seamless. I mean, it just feels like one song feeds into the next into the next. Um, Pretty remarkable. But yes, a tapestry of.
Yeah,
It's not only the creative part that's problematic at times; it's the equipment part and the
yeah.
managing of humans part as well, which is challenging.
Yes, it was those were the bits. It was the managing of my friends. It was human, and it was mechanical, using old equipment that
Right.
not many people can fix these days. And there's really not many people that can service multi-track big old tape machines, or take the work on.
Right.
So, but it was, looking back at the time, it was frustrating. But now I quite enjoy that process of piecing things together, and working like that, and even
Mm.
working with different drummers. It was frustrating at the time, but it it makes for a good sounding record because I really had to get the right people playing with me on each song, and because I spent a while
Right.
piecing it together, I was able to do that. So
Cool.
yeah, so in the end, I
Yeah.
think it worked out okay.
And James, why do you choose to keep it kind of like analog? Like, what's your I mean, what's the aesthetic that you're going after, or what does it bring to a record that you might not get through a digital, processings and whatnots?
I guess for me, it's not that I've kind of gone back to analog or I'm trying to be looking back on anything. It's more that when I have tried to do digital recording in a band setting, I couldn't ever get it to sound right. And then when
Mm,
I went from when I was a teenager having a cassette 4 tracks and things like that, and then
right.
I never really got into digital recording. And
Mm,
other people can make it sound good, but I couldn't make it sound that good. So about 15 years ago, I guess, is maybe even a bit more, I got an 8 track reel to reel, like a kind of semi-professional machine, and then
hmm
I was just able to make that sound good. So then I just haven't looked back because it just makes sense. If I can make that work and it sounds good, I can't make the digital bit sound good. So it's
right.
some people are
Could
really
you,
good at digital, you
if
know.
we go down that hole a little bit, like, what is it like that makes it sound good? Like, to your ear, like, what is? Could you describe the quality that you get from analog as opposed to a digital, just
Mm,
from your perspective?
yeah, yeah, sure. I find that one thing that's really satisfying is if you're multi-track recording, especially on your own, like I am, layering things up with
Hmm.
on a tape, it really sticks together nicely, and in a way that if you did it on digital, it might sound sometimes a bit disparate. But the tape, I find, really glues everything together. You can sometimes do a really kind of lazy performance on a tape machine in a charming way, and it will really sound lovely, and it's all glued together. And there's certain things like the drums, they just sound, they have such warmth recorded on tape, and it sounds more like you're in the room. And but so those are the I like recordings that you can feel the human element as well. And if you
Right.
record on tape, you can't edit in the way you can on the computer. And I like to hear little bits, like little,
Right.
not necessarily mistakes, but sometimes you hear something coming in just before it should,
Sure.
or and you hear that on
That's
60s
cool.
records, the way they're mixed. Sometimes something's way too loud, and it's because they had to mix these tracks together or whatever they did. They just left it like that. And I like to be able to hear the human element, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love how you describe that. That makes a ton of sense. Um,
Mm.
so coming back, like, how you've participated in other bands, co-leader, like, contributor, etc. What do you think that you took from each of those bands to inform Penny Arcade and the record that's about to come out? Let me get the date right. May 3rd.
Mm.
Um, called Backwater Collage.
Mm.
What is it? What is it from, like, your time with Veronica Falls, or the Proper Ornaments? Like, do you have aspects that that you took from those bands that you wanted to incorporate into your own stuff?
Well, I suppose you definitely, the more people you work with and projects you do learn different things, particularly in the studio. And those can be great. That's why working with other people is really good, because you might work with someone and they do something in a way you've never thought of before, and then
Hmm.
okay, that's a really nice way of doing that. And
Right.
it's not just bands, but other studios and places I've been in over the years. Sometimes you work with someone who's really uh, got really interesting ideas and does things the way that most people wouldn't. Uses
Hmm.
microphones in a way they shouldn't. Does
Hmm.
does things that are not done by the book, and sometimes work. So over the years, I guess it's particularly for my own recording, I've worked with some people who've done some really interesting things and have
Hmm.
shown me stuff years ago. Try this and do this, and so I get you kind of end up building up a list
Right.
of things, little tricks and ways of doing things, and often the
Hmm.
unconventional ways are the best, the ways that you wouldn't normally get taught if you went to a music tech college. Those.
Right.
So I guess those are the things in different bands and
Hmm.
projects, but also working with different people, the way they would write, with like Roxanne from Veronica Falls, You you work with the way someone can sing in a different way to you, and that can help
Hmm.
the way you write melodies. So it's I think
Right.
from different projects, you're always picking up. If you really collaborate with people, you always pick up stuff, and I'm sure they're the same. They'll end up like borrowing little things, or you work together and stuff. And so
Hmm.
I wouldn't. There's not been necessarily one clear thing but just little things
Right.
from different people. You pick up over the years, and I'm sure it goes vice versa.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And you're not only, you also record artists as well. I had Pete Astor on a few months ago
Mm.
um, with his latest record, but you had worked on some of his previous records,
Yeah,
recording them.
yeah.
And what's
I
yeah,
recorded definitely recorded. I recorded one for him, and maybe I did a couple of singles as well. Maybe some other stuff, and play guitar on another one.
okay,
Uh, but that's kind of how I tend to record if I'm asked. I've done a few records for different people where they'll ask me, and if it's someone like Pete who I like his music, definitely yeah,
yeah,
I'm up for doing it. And but as opposed to, I've never been a commercial studio, but I'll if it's someone asks me and I like their music, then it's always fun working with someone like Pete. That again, I picked up things from
right,
him. He's got good ideas and lots of
right,
experience, and whenever you work with someone, it might even just be little tricks about the way they sing into a microphone and little things like that. You pick up, and especially when someone's got lots of experience and worked on lots of projects, is I think that's a nice way of collaborating and working with people. That things get handed down, and you show them little things, and it's one of the nice things about working with people for me is definitely seeing other people's process.
right, right. And if you had the flip side of that, I was curious about, like, being in a band. I mean, you have all those joys and the camaraderie and the, learning from each other and developing as artists together. What are some of the other flip sides to it that aren't as exciting? You were mentioning, alluding to that when you were playing with other artists, that you have to be aware of, okay, she might think this, or I might have to change that because of this, or like, what are those challenges that you have that you don't have when you're doing things all on your own?
Yeah, that's a good question because there are definitely sometimes working with a different group of people and you have very different temperaments and ideas about how things should be done.
Right.
It can be challenging and
Mm-hmm.
you have to learn to work with different people and you can't always sometimes I found in the past I to get my idea across I have to do it almost in sections like how about we try this and then we try that and then eventually you get to where you intended to go, but if you just
Right.
said straight away let's try this, it doesn't work like that. So those are the kind of things that working on your own is really great because you can go, okay, I want it to sound like this, and you can try it and you can go straight like that. But when you work with people, everyone's very different, and sometimes people are very strong-willed. Often they are,
Mm-hmm.
in musicians are often like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that can be a tricky thing for sure, and it's been like that in some bands. It's very rewarding when it works, but it can be hard sometimes
Right.
to be aligned and be on the same page.
Right. And in saying that, what would be the initial spark that would bring about a collaboration? I read that you met, people at shows, and then, similar interests sparked. What tend to be those sparks that say, hey, let's collaborate together and record some stuff?
Well, often if it's met in a casual way, it's just those kind of standard things of like bonding over records you really like. But then it goes a bit deeper than that. It's more like personality. If you find that you really get along and that it's more than just those things about you liking the same Velvet Underground records or this or that. Then it's more that if you really feel like your personalities are gelling, that's when maybe you could do something because I think people who haven't done bands and gone on tour and made records don't realize how much time you spend with someone and how
Right. Right.
connected you have to be. So if you
Mm-hmm.
start off when you're not gelling on the personality on a personal level, but maybe you make great music, it wouldn't last very long. So you have
Okay.
to You have to get, and also you have to get excited by the other people or person.
Hmm. Right. And what they can bring to
Sure.
your toolkit, right? Like, how can we complement each other's um, stuff, ideas, artistic ideas and impressions and stuff.
Yes, yeah,
Super cool.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And James, what have been some like really key moments in your career thus far, in your musical career, of standouts where it kind of like propelled you a little step higher or backwards? I mean, what
Yeah.
do you have some of those stories of like moments that that changed your trajectory a little bit?
Uh, I guess so. Like the changes might be, yeah, they're kind of they can be subtle, but from what we were just talking about when we first started recording the first Ultimate Painting record, we were sending each other, me and the other guy Jack, sending each other demos, and his demos were just great, and then they kept getting better. And then when you work with someone, I would want to make something really good to send back, and to be at the same level. And I think if
Right.
you work with someone and they're giving you really good stuff, then it ups your game. And then when we recorded that record, we did it in literally like about 10 days. Maybe it was probably about a week of recording, and everything just flowed, and
Hmm.
we did everything in a couple of takes. And that kind of that felt like we really like elevated
Hmm.
me, at least in the way I worked, and how quickly you can achieve something. But
Right.
I think that's the secret to those things. If you work with someone who is, it's all about the songs for me. If they're doing really good songs, and then you're excited by what they're doing, it makes you excited about what you can be adding to it and what will fit with that. And then you're kind of building, okay, they've got something like that, I'll do something that works with that. And then you kind of you're really working together.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. Like where your artistic talents are like bouncing off of one another and you're keep up in your game, up in your game. That's really, really cool,
Yeah,
James.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the recording side as well. That I'd come off Veronica Falls, which the records took ages to record, and I wasn't recording them. I recorded an EP and some stuff for that band, but we kind of went to like bigger studios and spent loads of time and money. And that was
Yeah.
after that I had to make something where I was producing and recording it because it took so long, and I wasn't always happy with the results.
Hmm.
So then it was refreshing to do work with someone and do it so quickly, and it sounded great, and being controlled as well, so you don't have to go
Right.
somewhere else and be spending loads of money and loads of time, and it's that I guess that was a bit of a moment where it helped me move forwards.
Amazing. Amazing. Cool. So kind of just to bring things to a close again, James, thanks so much for hopping on and sharing these stories. Really
Yeah,
cool. Really
yeah,
fun to
pleasure.
listen to. Um, what is on the map now for 2024? So your first solo record, Penny Arcade, comes out May 3rd.
Mhm.
Um, what does the rest of 2024 look like for Penny Arcade and yourself? Other projects that you could talk about, or kind of your next trajectory?
So I'm doing some shows around the release in the UK and Europe, and I will be doing that's in May and June, and be doing some more later in the year. And in between that, my wife and I are moving to Brussels in the I think late summer. So
Fun.
I've got around playing shows. We'll be moving, and I'll be somehow moving all my equipment and seeing how that goes.
Sounds like a full summer ahead of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Full
that's
of fun.
right. And just to kind of put a pin on this, what do you think about your latest release? Like if you kind of like put a little bit of distance between, in it so much to kind of seeing it as a final product, what are your first impressions of what you created?
It's difficult for me to say right now because it's hard for me to listen to. I think I would be able to give you a good answer in 6 months, but
Right.
it's hard for me to tell at the moment. I think it flows well, and it sounds like a good body of work, and
Yeah.
I think it stands up. I think it will stand up well. but it's a bit hard for me to tell because it's a bit too soon after. You know, I was only just listening to the masters being done like a couple of months ago. So we'll see. In 6 months, I think I'll have a better idea of how to answer that.
Cool. Well, we'll follow up.
Okay. All right.
Well, I wish you all the best on the release, on the shows, on your move. This has been a ton of fun. Thanks so much for carving a little bit of time to talk with us today.
Yeah, it's been fun for me. Thanks a lot.
Sometimes when I think back then, walking down memory lane, I still see you. Don't you cry now, tears for him, boy. It's not worth it, now it's done. Don't you cry now, tears for him, boy. It's not worth it, walk away. Now it's done, and you've moved on. There's always someone saying something. It's time to leave when you feel that breeze blowing in from the past. Don't you cry now, tears for him, boy. It's not worth it, now it's done. Don't you cry now, tears for him, boy. It's not worth it.